Hey guys, tonight we are going to travel back to a time without timers, thermostats, or even a basic understanding of what yeast actually is. We're stepping into the muddy, slightly sticky shoes of a medieval alewife, a woman brewing ale from her own home in, let's say, 14th century England. This isn't a story of kings or knights, it's a story of grain, water, and monumental patience. Honestly, given the lack of coffee and the sheer amount of heavy lifting involved, you'd be lucky to make it through the first day. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd also love to know where you're tuning in from, so drop a comment below with your city and the current time. It's always fascinating to see where these quiet histories end up. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's seize into 2 nights' journey together. There's no alarm clock. Your awakening is a slow surrender to the cold. A deep, penetrating chill that seeps up from the hard packed earth floor, through the straw stuffed mattress you share with your husband and small child. It's a cold that feels ancient and absolute. Long before the first hint of gray light will touch the sky, you know it's time to move. Every moment of daylight is precious, and your work must begin in the dark. You slide out from under the heavy, scratchy wool blanket, your feet meeting the frigid floor. The air in your 1- room, waddle- and -stop home, is thick with the smells of sleep, damp earth, and the lingering ghost of last night's smoky fire. You can see the faint outlines of your world, the low beamed ceiling, the rough wooden table, the dark lump of your husband still asleep, and the smaller lump of your daughter beside him, breathing softly. Your first task is light, not daylight, but firelight. You move carefully to the hearth, the absolute center of your universe. Here, under a bed of gray ash, are the glowing, precious embers you so carefully banked last night. Kneeling down, you gently blow on them. Your breath is small, white cloud in the frigid air. You feed the awakening glow with scraps of dried moss and tiny twigs, coaxing it, nursing it. This isn't just for warmth. This fire is the engine of your entire livelihood. Without it, there is no boiled water, no mash, no gale, no income. As the first small flames begin to flicker and dance, you reach for a rush light. It's a simple thing, a common reed soaked in leftover animal fat or kitchen grease. Once lit, it gives off a dim, sputtering light and a faint, may smell. It's not much, but it's enough to see by. Historians sometimes romanticize the flicker of candlelight, but for you, this greasy, smelly rush light is the far more common reality. It's a tiny, mundane miracle of domestic engineering. The fire is growing now, beginning to push back the oppressive cold. Its light catches the texture of your wall's ale, lattice of woven hazel or willow branches. The water, packed with a mixture of wet soil, clay, sand, and straw. The daub, you can see the cracks and gaps where the winter wind finds its way in. A constant, faint whistle that is the soundtrack to your life. This single room is your kitchen, your bedroom, your living room, and, most importantly, your brewery. You look towards the corner where your few provisions are stored. A sack of barley, a small barrel of oats, a hanging string of dried onions. What to eat is the day's first question, and it's a subject academics still argue about. Did common folk really start their day with ale minus soup and a hunk of bread? Or was it more likely a simple porridge, a pottage of grains and whatever scraps were left from the day before? For you, it's not a debate. It's a practical reality. Today, it will be oats, boiled with water and a pinch of precious salt, a meal designed not for pleasure, but for fuel. For now, you just sit on the low stool by the growing fire, absorbing its warmth. The world outside is still completely dark and silent, save for the wind. But in here, because of you, there is a small, growing bubble of light and warmth. The quiet sounds of the house are familiar comforts, the rustle of mice in the thatched roof, the soft snores from the mattress, the crackling pop of the fire. Your day of breaking work hasn't even truly begun. But these first solitary moments, in the quiet dark with the waking fire, are entirely your own. The fire is now a steady, reassuring presence, its light painting the small room in dancing shades of orange and shadow. Your husband is beginning to stir, his day of labor in the fields, or a nearby workshop soon to begin. Your daughter remains asleep before the house is fully awake, and certainly before you can even think about the complex process of brewing. You have another crucial journey to make. You pull on a pair of rough leather shoes, grab your 2 wooden buckets, and wrap your wool shawl tightly around your shoulders. It's time for the morning market run. Stepping outside, the cold hits you again, sharpened more biting than it was in the shelter of your home. The pre-dawn sky is a deep, bruised purple, and the ground is slick with a thin layer of frost. Your path is a narrow, muddy track that winds between other low, dark houses, their thatched roofs looking like sleeping beasts in the gloom. There are no street-lighted, no paved roads. You navigate by memory, your feet knowing every dip and turn, every treacherous patch of mud. You can smell the town waking up around you, the sharp scent of wood smoke from other hearths, the close, earthy smell of livestock in nearby pens. You're not going for vegetables or meat. Not yet. Your destination is a specific stall, run by a farmer you trust, a man whose barley is consistently good. This is the single most important transaction of your week. The quality of your grain determines the quality of your ale, and your reputation is everything. You arrive at the town square, which is just beginning to come alive. A few other figures move in the semi-minus darkness, their faces hidden by hoods and shadows. Lanterns hung from stalls cast long, flickering shadows, making the familiar space seem strange and mysterious. You find the farmer's stall, AGS already there. A large, quiet man with hands as rough as tree bark. He nods a greeting. There's no friendly chatter, just a quiet understanding of business. You run your hands through the sack of barley he has opened for inspection. You're not just looking at it, you're feeling it. You let the grains run through your fingers. Are they plump? Are they dry? Is there any sign of mold or pests? You bring a handful to your nose and inhale deeply. It should smell clean, sweet, and slightly dusty. This sensory inspection is your science. Some historians argue over the exact yields and measurements of medieval agriculture. That for you, it's all about this tactile knowledge, passed down through generations. You haggle that it's a ritual. Your voice is low, firm. You point out a few shriveled grains. He gestures to the fullness of the sack. It's a quiet, respectful dance of commerce. And you both know where you'll land. You agree on a price. And you don't pay with clinking gold coins. You pay with what you have, a mix of small, thin silver pennies and maybe a promise of a few jugs of the ale this very barley will produce. Barter is still a huge part of the economy, a system built on trust and local relationships. Now for the hard part. The farmer helps. You heave the heavy sack of barley onto your back. You bend your knees, wrap your arms around it, and straighten up with a grunt. The weight is immense, settling onto your shoulders and pressing down on your spine. This is a cold, hard fact of your life that drawings and illuminated manuscripts rarely show the sheer physical strength required for a woman's domestic work. You begin the slow, tearful walk back home, each step a deliberate effort. The sun is just beginning to rise, casting a weak, watery light over the rooftops. As you walk, your mind is already working. You're recalculating. This sack should be enough for 2, maybe 3 brewing s. You're thinking about the weather, the temperature, how it will affect the malting. You pass the town church, its stone walls impassive and gray. A priest might be inside, preparing for the first mass of the day, his world governed by prayers and liturgy. Your world is governed by something far more elemental than mysterious. Alchemical transformation of grain into liquid gold. It's a process that feels just as sacred, just as important, You finally reach your own door, your back screaming in protest. You let the sack slide to the ground with a heavy thud, the sound echoing in the quiet morning. Your husband is now up, ready to leave. He helps you drag the sack inside. A brief, silent exchange of shared labor. Your market run is complete. You haven't made anything yet, but you have secured the soul of your next batch. The raw material, full of dusty, sleeping potential, now sits on your floor, waiting for you to bring it to life. With the barley secured and your husband gone for the day, you turn your attention to the second key ingredient, the one that truly defines your ale and separates it from all others. This isn't about hops. In 14th century England, hops are still a relatively new and often distrusted flavoring, sometimes even outlawed as a wicked and pernicious weed. Your secret lies in a carefully guarded, intensely personal blend of herbs and spices known as gearewit. You move to a small, unassuming wooden chest tucked away in a corner, far from the heat of the fire and the dampness of the walls. Lifting the lid releases a complex, earthy perfume into the air. Inside are several small, tightly woven pouches. Each contains a different dried herb, foraged from the local woods and fields, or purchased in tiny, expensive quantities from a traveling spice merchant. This collection is your signature, your intellectual property, the base of most gearewit. A historical fact we know from surviving tax records and botanical analysis is usually bog myrtle. You pull out a pouch of its dried leaves and catkins. It provides a pleasant, slightly resinous bitterness, a good counterbalance to the sweetness of the malted barley. But it's the other ingredients that make your ale your ale. You have a pouch of yarrow, known as herba militaris for its use in staunching wounds. But in ale, it adds a subtle, sage-like aroma and, according to folklore, a certain intoxicating quality. This is a point of debate among food historians. Were these herbs chosen just for flavor, or was there a conscious effort to create a psychopative brew? For you, it's simply what has always been done. It's what makes the ale work. You also have a small, precious bag of heather flowers, which will lend a delicate, honeyed scent to the final product. And then there's the truly secret ingredient, the one you use sparingly, a small pouch of mugwort. It's a common weed, but it has a powerful reputation in folk medicine and superstition. It's said to protect against evil spirits and enhance dreams. Whether it does or not is irrelevant. What matters is the unique, slightly medicinal, and deeply familiar flavor it imparts. Your recipe is not written down. It exists only in your memory and in your hands. You measure not in ounces or grams, but in pinches and handfuls. You take a bit of bog myrtle, a smaller bit of yarrow, a tiny pinch of heather. You crush them together in a stone mortar and pestle. The rhythmic grinding a quiet, percussive sound in the house. The air fills with the fragrant dust. Each alewife had her own gearewit recipe, a closely guarded secret that was often passed down from mother to daughter. This was the heart of her brand, the source of her competitive edge in a crowded market. You are, in essence, a performing chemist and an herbalist. Working with botanical compounds you understand through taste, smell, and tradition rather than scientific classification. Some of the herbs in your GRU, it have genuine preservative qualities, helping the ale last a little longer. Others are purely for flavor, and some, scholars suspect, were added for their narcotic or medicinal effects, making the ale not just a beverage but a form of social medicine, a tonic to dull the aches and anxieties of a harsh medieval life. Today's batch will be a standard one, so you stick to your usual proportions. But you're already thinking ahead. For the upcoming feast day of St. Giles, you might add a pinch more of something special, perhaps a few precious juniper berries, or even a sliver of ginger root if you can afford it to create a stronger, more celebratory brew that can command a higher price. You carefully scoop the ground gearewit into a small linen bag, tying it tightly with a piece of string. This fragrant balm will be dropped into the boiling wort later. infusing the liquid with its complex character. It's on the table, a small, lumpy pouch that holds all your expertise and tradition, while the grain provides the body and the alcohol. This little bag of weeds and flowers provides the soul. It's what makes someone walk past 3 other ale-steaks to stop at yours. It's the taste of home, of your specific patch of land, and of your particular, unwritten wisdom. The grain is the canvas, but the GRU, it is the signature at the bottom of the painting. The GRU, it is prepared. The barley is waiting, and the fire is now a roaring, hungry beast. But before you can combine them, you need the single most important ingredient by volume: water, and you need a lot of it. This isn't a simple matter of turning a tap. This is perhaps the most physically demanding part of your entire day, a task of pure, brute force labor. You grab your 2 wooden buckets. They're heavy even when empty, made of oak staves bound with iron hoops, and they feel like a permanent extension of your arms. You also grab the carrying yoke, a curved piece of wood that will rest across your shoulders in the back of your neck. It's a simple but brilliant piece of technology designed to distribute the weight of the full buckets and free up your hands. Still, it's a cruel thing, and you can feel the familiar smooth spot on your neck where it has rubbed your skin raw more times than you can count. Your destination is the town well. Some larger, wealthier households might have their own private well or cistern, but for you and most of your neighbors, the communal well in the center of the square is the only source of clean water. The word clean is, of course, relative. Historians and archaeologists who have excavated these sites know that medieval wells were often contaminated with runoff from the streets, which were, to put it mildly, unsanitary, but it was clearer and tasted better than the murky water from the nearby river, which served as the town's all-purpose drain. The journey to the well is now made in the full light of a chilly, overcast morning. The town is awake. Carts rattle by, pulled by oxen or donkeys. People shout greetings. A dog barks. You navigate the familiar crowds, the yoke on your shoulders, the empty buckets knocking against your legs. You are not the only one on this errand. There's a small queue of other women and young boys at the well, a silent, waiting line that forms every single morning. It's a social hub of sorts, a place where news is exchanged in quiet murmurs while waiting your turn. Finally, you are at the well miner's head. It's a low stone wall built around a deep, dark hole in the earth. A wooden winch mechanism, slick with damp, stands over it. You take the rope, which is thick, heavy, and slimy to the touch, and begin to lower one of your buckets into the darkness. It descends with a rattling sound, seemingly forever, until you hear the distant, satisfying plop as it hits the water far below. Now the real work begins. You brace your feet and begin to turn the crank of the winch, hand over hand. The resistance is immense. The rope grows taut, and every muscle in your back, shoulders, and arms strains against the dead weight of the water-filled bucket. It's a slow, grueling ascent. The wet rope drips icy water onto your hands, numbing your fingers. The crank squeals in protest with every turn. This process is a testament to the sheer physical strength of medieval women, a strength that was not exceptional but entirely necessary for daily survival. Finally, the bucket emerges from the darkness, dripping and full. You guide it carefully over the well miner's head and pour the contents into one of your carrying buckets. The water is cold and clear, but you know it's not sterile. That's the unspoken magic of ale. The process of boiling the water, the wort, and then fermenting it created a beverage that was far safer to drink than the water itself. This is a point that is often emphasized in popular history, and for good reason. Your ale isn't just a drink, it's a public health service. 1 bucket down, 5 more to go. You need at least 3 full trips to gather enough water for a brewing session. Each trip is the same. The walk to the well, the wait, the back miner's breaking work of drawing the water, the slow, careful walk back with the yoke digging into your neck and the water sloshing with every step. Your steps are short and measured to avoid spilling even a drop of the precious cargo. The weight is bone-minus wearying. By the time you have hauled the last bucket of water back to your house, you are breathing heavily, and your arms ache with a deep, familiar burn. You pour the water into your large brewing cauldron, which now sits waiting by the fire. You look at the volume of water, a small lake contained in a copper pot. It represents more than an hour of relentless, exhausting labor, and it's only the first step. The day has barely begun, but you've already completed a workout that would exhaust a modern athlete. There's no time to rest. The fire is ready, and the water must be heated. The water is in the cauldron. A huge, round-bellied copper pot that is your single most valuable possession. It was part of your dowry, a piece of capital more important than any jewelry or fine cloth. Now, you face the delicate and dangerous task of taming the fire to do your bidding. This isn't just about making a big blaze. It's about controlling heat with a level of precision that is remarkably difficult without any dials or gauges. Your hearth is not a contained, modern fireplace. It's a stone-lined pit in the center of the room, or against one wall, with a hole in the roof above idle louver to let out some, but never all, of the smoke. The air in your home is permanently hazy, and the rafters above are blackened with years of soot. This is a constant health hazard that modern historians, studying skeletal remains, can see evidence of in the form of respiratory illnesses. For you, the sting of smoke in your eyes is as normal as breathing. You begin to feed the fire, building it up from a steady glow to a serious, roaring flame. You don't use neat, chopped logs. Your fuel is a motley collection of whatever you can gather or afford: thick branches, scavenged wood from the nearby forest, peat bricks if you live in the right region, and dried animal dung. Each fuel burns differently. Wood burns hot and fast. Peat smolders slow and steady. You understand the properties of your fuel intimately, knowing which to use to bring the water to a boil and which to use to maintain a gentle simmer for hours. The cauldron doesn't sit directly in the flames. It hangs from a large iron hook, a pot crane or sway, that is anchored into the wall of the hearth. This allows you to swing the pot over the heart of the fire or away from it. Your primary method of temperature control. You and your husband spent a significant sum to have the blacksmith forge this crane. It is the key to your entire operation. You swing the heavy cauldron, now filled with gallons of cold water, over the hottest part of the fire. The sheer weight of it makes the movement a careful, deliberate act. A spill would not only be a catastrophic loss of hard-1 water, but could also extinguish your precious fire or cause a steam explosion. You are constantly aware of the danger. Your arms bear the faint, silvery scars of old burns, a testament to a lifetime of working this close to open flame. As the fire roars, the room becomes intensely hot and even smokier. You have to be careful that sparks don't fly out and catch on the straw bedding or the thatched roof. House fires are a constant, terrifying threat in these tightly packed wooden towns. There's a leather bucket of sand and another of water always sitting near the hearth, not for brewing, but for safety. It's a rudimentary fire extinguisher, but it's all you have. You watch the water. You listen to it. You learn to read its state by the sounds it makes. The gentle singing sound is the first tiny bubbles from at the bottom, the more vigorous hiss as it approaches a simmer, the final, rolling, tumbling roar of a full boil. This sensory knowledge is your thermometer. While the water heats, you are not idle. You are sweeping the floor, tidying the small space, and keeping a watchful eye on your daughter, who is now awake and playing quietly with a wooden doll near the door, away from the dangerous hearth. Once the water reaches a full, rolling boil, you use a long wooden pole to carefully swing the cauldron partially away from the main flame. You don't want to lose the boil, but you need to moderate the heat for the next stage. This act of controlling the fire is a constant, dynamic process. You are adding fuel, adjusting the position of the pot, and damping the flames with wet leaves if they get too high. It's a dance, a partnership between you and the elemental force you've invited into your home. Historians debate the efficiency of these open-minded hearth systems, but their centrality to life is undisputed. The fire was the home's engine, its light source, its kitchen stove, and its central heating unit, all rolled into one smoky, hazardous, and absolutely essential package. As you stand there, stirring the water with a long wooden paddle to ensure it heats evenly, you are a master of applied thermodynamics, using intuition and experience in place of science. The water is almost ready. The next stage, the transformation of the raw barley, is about to begin. The water is hot, and the day is moving on. Now you turn your full attention back to the sack of barley you hauled from the market. It cannot be used as it is. In its raw, sleeping state, the grain starches are locked away, useless for brewing. Your next task is to trick the barley into thinking it's time to grow, a slow and delicate process known as malting. This is the true alchemy of brewing, the step that creates the fermentable sugars that will eventually become alcohol. You don't malt the entire sack at once. You measure out enough for one batch, using a simple wooden bowl as your scoop. You carry this portion of the grain to a large, shallow wooden trough. Then, using one of the buckets of water you so laboriously hauled, you begin the steeping process. You pour the water over the grain, submerging it completely. For the next day or two, the barley will just sit there, soaking, absorbing the moisture, and swelling. It's a quiet, passive stage, but you have to watch it carefully. You'll drain and change the water at least once to prevent souring or mold from taking hold. After a couple of days, once the grain is fully swollen and soft, you drain the water for the last time. Now, you spread the damp grain across a clean section of your floor, or if you're slightly more prosperous, on a dedicated malting floor made of smooth stone or plaster. You spread it in a thin, even layer. This is the germination stage. You are essentially creating a flat, miniature field inside your house. Over the next 3 to 5 days, a quiet miracle occurs. The tiny grains, believing spring has come, begin to wake up. Tiny white rootlets, called chits, start to emerge from one end of the kernel. In a small sprout, the agarose spire begins to grow, unseen, just beneath the husk. This process is crucial because as the grain germinates, it produces enzymes. These enzymes are the magic key. They are what will break down the complex starches in the grain into the simple sugars that yeast can eat. This is not a passive process for you. You are the god of this miniature field. Several times a day, you must turn the malt, using a wooden rake or even just your hands to gently toss and move the grain around. This prevents the tiny, growing rootlets from matting together into a solid lump. It also helps to control the temperature. Germination creates its own heat, and if the pile gets too warm, it can ruin the whole batch. You are constantly feeling the grain, judging its temperature and dampness with the back of your hand. Some historical accounts suggest that dedicated malt houses were common, but for a small scale domestic brewer like you, the living space often doubled as the mouth is. You are watching for the perfect moment to halt the process. You need the enzymes to be fully developed, but you don't want the growing sprout to consume all the starches for its own growth. How do you know when that moment has arrived? You learn to judge by feel and by sight. You look at the length of the little rootlets. You might bite into a kernel. Does it crush easily? Is it mealy and soft inside? The most common method, and one that historians believe was widespread, is to judge the growth of the agarose spire. You can't see it, but you can feel it as a slight ridge growing up the back of the kernel. When that ridge has grown about 3¼ of the way up the grain, the malt is ready. This moment of judgment is critical. Stop it too soon, and you won't have enough enzymes to convert the starches. Let it go too long, and the growing plant will have used up all the food you want for your ale. There are no books or guides to tell you when it's right. It's a knowledge you hold in your fingertips, a feel for the process learned through years of trial terror, and quiet observation. Once you decide the moment is perfect, you must stop the growth immediately. You do this with heat. You gather up the green malt and spread it out to dry. In the summer, you might just spread it on cloths in the sun. But more often, you'll need to use a kiln. Your kiln is not a separate building. It might be a perforated surface, like a sheet made of woven horsehair, placed high above your hearth, well away from the main flames but deep in the rising column of warm, smoky air. You spread the malt there, and over the next day, the gentle heat will toast it, driving off the moisture and halting the germination in its tracks. The level of toasting here will also determine the final color of your light toasting for a pale ale, the darker toasting for a brown or porter style brew. The resulting dried, crunchy, slightly sweet grain is now officially malt. It's ready. The barley S transformation is complete, and your pantry now holds the soul of your next beer. The malt is ready, smelling faintly sweet and toasty from its time drying over the fire. The next stage of your day, and it is a full day's work, is the mash. This is where you will finally introduce the transformed grain to the hot water you prepared earlier, coaxing the enzymes to do their work. It's a warm, wet, and incredibly slow part of the process. In many ways, it's the most boring part of brewing, a long period of watchful waiting. First, you need to crack the hard, dried malt kernels. You don't want to grind them into a fine flour. You just need to break them open to expose the starches inside. You spread the malt on a hard, clean surface and use a heavy wooden roller or a simple stone to crush it. It's yet another physically demanding task. Your shoulders and back protesting as you put your weight into it. The air fills with a sweet, grainy dust. The resulting coarse grist is then tipped into your mash tun. Your mash tun is not a separate, specialized vessel. For a domestic brewer like you, it is most likely the very same cauldron you used to heat the water. You've let the boiling water cool down just enough. This is critically important. If the water is too hot, it will kill the precious enzymes in the malt. If it's too cool, they won't work efficiently. You have no thermometer. You judge the temperature by dipping your finger or elbow into a quick, painful test. When it feels just right, a specific level of hotness you have learned to recognize, it's time. You begin to slowly pour the crushed malt into the hot water, stirring constantly with your long wooden paddle. This paddle, often called a mash rake, is one of your most essential tools. You stir and stir, breaking up any clumps of grain, ensuring every particle is soaked. The mixture, now called the mash, thickens into a warm, sweet smelling porridge. It looks like a rustic, lumpy oatmeal. The sweet, comforting aroma fills your small house, a smell that clings to the walls and your clothes, the signature scent of a brewery. And now, you wait. For the next hour, or possibly two, you must maintain the temperature of this mash as steadily as you can. This is the saccharification rest, the period when the enzymes are actively converting starch into sugar. You swing the cauldron away from the direct flames, keeping it in a warm spot by the hearth. You might trap it in thick wool blankets, or even pile straw around it to insulate it and keep the heat in. This technique, insulating the mash tun, is a practice that brewers have used for centuries, a simple but effective piece of thermal engineering. This waiting period is a strange mix of inactivity and vigilance. You can't leave. You must stay close, occasionally, giving the mash a gentle stir, checking its temperature by feel, and adjusting the pot's position relative to the fire. It's a long, quiet, and frankly, tedious stretch of time. Your daughter might be playing at your feet, or you might use this time for other small, quiet tasks that can be done right by the hearth, mending a tear in your husband's tunic, spinning wool into thread with a simple drop spindle, or just staring into the flames, lost in thought. This is where much of the unrecorded history of women's lives resides, in these long, quiet hours of waiting. It's not the dramatic stuff of chronicles and epic poems. It's the slow, rhythmic, and repetitive labor that formed the backbone of the household economy. Historians can analyze the chemical processes of the mash, debating the specific enzyme activities at different temperatures, but they can't replicate the feeling of this specific moment, the humid warmth in the air, the sweet smell, the low crackle of the fire, the profound boredom punctuated by moments of focused attention. You lift the paddle and let some of the liquid drip back into the pot. You are watching the consistency. You are waiting. Your entire day's work, the quality of the final ale, depends on what is happening invisibly inside the pot right now. This long, slow, boring wait is the secret ingredient that no recipe can capture. It is the enforced mindfulness of the medieval artisan, a state of being dictated by the unhurried pace of natural processes. The enzymes don't care if you're in a rush. They work on their own schedule, and all you can do is provide the right conditions and wait patiently for them to finish their sweet, silent work. The long, quiet wait is over. The air in your home is thick with the warm, sweet, and grainy scent of the mash. You have given the enzymes enough time to perform their invisible miracle. Now comes a moment of truth, a critical judgment that will determine the character and strength of your final product. It's time to separate the sweet liquid from the spent grains and taste the first wort. The process of separation is called laddering, and it requires another piece of simple but clever equipment. You move the cauldron off the heat completely. Inside the mash, you might have a filter bed made of a layer of straw or juniper branches, which you laid at the bottom of the pot before adding the grain and water. Or, you might use a separate vessel with a spigot at the bottom, its opening protected by a mesh of woven reeds. Either way, the goal is the same: to create a filter that holds back the solid grain husks while allowing the sugary liquid to drain through. You begin to draw off the liquid. This first run minus off is the richest and sweetest. It's a beautiful, translucent brown liquid, the color of dark honey or amber, depending on how much you toasted your malt. This is the first wort. It trickles slowly from the spigot or is carefully ladled out, steaming into a waiting bucket. The sight of it is deeply satisfying. This is the tangible result of all your work so far: the hulling, the malting, the mashing. But you're not just looking at it. You need to taste it. This is a crucial diagnostic step. You scoop a small amount into a wooden bowl, blow on it to cool it down, and take a sip. You hold the liquid in your mouth for a moment. What are you tasting for? First and foremost, sweetness. It should be intensely sweet, almost like a sugary syrup. This tells you that the enzymes did their job well and converted plenty of starch. A lack of sweetness is a sign of a failed mash, a disaster for your brew. But you're also tasting for other things. Are there any off-minus flavors? A sartang would suggest a bacterial infection has already taken hold, a constant risk in an environment without modern sanitation. Is there a burnt, acrid taste? That would mean you let the mash get too hot, scorching the grains against the bottom of the pot. Your palate is your primary scientific instrument, your hydrometer and pH meter all in one. You are performing a sensory analysis that is incredibly sophisticated, even if you don't have the words to describe the chemical compounds you're detecting. This is also where you make a key decision about the strength of your ale. This first wort is the most concentrated. It will be used to make your best, strongest ale, the stuff you sell to discerning customers or save for special occasions. It's a point of some debate among historians whether medieval brewers consciously made different strengths of ale from a single mash. But for small minus-scale brewers, it was an economic necessity. Nothing was wasted. Once you've drained off all the first wort into a separate container, you don't just throw away the wet grains. There's still sugar locked inside them. So, you begin a second process called sparging. You pour more hot water over the grain bed in the mash tea. You want to rinse out the remaining sugars. This produces a second, weaker wort. You'll taste this one too. It will be noticeably less sweet, lighter in body and color. This second runnings will be used to make a small ale or table beer. This was the everyday drink, the stuff your own family would consume. It was lower in alcohol, less flavorful, but still safer than water and provided a source of liquid calories to get through a hard day's work. You now have 2 or maybe even 3 distinct grades of wort, separated into different buckets or barrels. The first is your premium product. The second is your daily bread. Some brewers might even do a third sparge to create an almost water minus, like ale for servants or children. It was a highly efficient, Darrow minus waste system. You stand there for a moment, looking at the buckets of wort. You've successfully extracted the soul of the barley. The liquid holds all the potential, but it is not yet ale. It's just sweet, non-minus alcoholic green tea. The next major transformation, the one that introduces life and spirit into the brew, is yet to come. But this step is complete. You have judged the wort, and it is good. The foundation of your product is sound. The worts are separated. The spent grain has been scraped out of the cauldron to be used as feed for your pigs or chickens, and the great pot is now back over the fire. It's time for the boil. You put the precious first wort back into the cauldron. As it begins to heat up again, you turn your attention to a simple but profoundly important task, announcing to the world that you will soon have ale for sale. You walk to the door of your house. Leaning against the frame is a long branch of birch, or a simple broom, your ale minus stake or ale minus pole. You take it and firmly plant it in the ground by your doorway, or fix it to a bracket on the wall so that it juts out horizontally over the muddy track that serves as your street. This is your sign. It is your advertisement, your business license, and your open minus for minus business sign all rolled into one. This practice was so common, so universally understood, that it became a feature of the medieval landscape. A street with several ale minus stakes sticking out was a clear indicator of a thirsty neighborhood. There were no neon signs, no printed posters. There was just this simple, rustic symbol, a piece of the natural world repurposed for commerce. Historians know about this practice not just from illustrations in manuscripts but also from town regulations. Some towns had laws dictating the maximum length of an ale minus stake to prevent them from becoming a hazard to people on horseback or carts passing by. In London, a law from 1375 decreed that no ale minus stake should project more than 7 feet over the public way. Yours is a modest length, just enough to be seen from down the lane. The raising of the ale minus stake is an act of public declaration. It's a promise. It tells your neighbors, travelers, and anyone passing by that in a day or two, once the fermentation is complete, there will be fresh, good ale to be had right here. It's a signal that sets expectations and starts generating future business. Your neighbors see the stake and make a mental note to stop by. A carter planning his route might decide to take this street, knowing a refreshing drink awaits him at the end of his journey. It's also an act of confidence. By putting up your stake, you are claiming that your brew will be successful. You are backing your own skill. A premature or unwarranted ale minus stake could be a source of public ridicule if the ale turned out to be sour or weak. Your reputation is quite literally hanging out there for everyone to see. While you are outside, you take a moment to look up and down the lane. You see another ale minus stake a few houses down, belonging to Margaret, your main competitor. Hers is a bit fancier. A proper broom with the bristles bound tightly. Is she brewing today too? A quiet, unspoken rivalry exists between the alewives of a town. It's not usually hostile. It's a competition based on quality, price, and reputation. You give a curt nod to a neighbor walking past, who glances at your stake and then at you. A silent acknowledgement of your day's work. Back inside, the wort is now coming to a vigorous, rolling boil. This is a crucial step for several reasons. The boil sterilizes the wort, killing off any wild bacteria or yeast that might have been present on the malt or in the water. This purification is key to making a stable, drinkable product. It also helps to concentrate the sugars and flavors. Now is the moment you've been waiting for. You take the small linen bag of GRUet, your secret turbo blend, and drop it into the boiling liquid. A puff of fragrant steam erupts from the pot, a complex aroma of herbs and sweet malt. The bag will bob and steep in the hot liquid for the next hour or so, slowly releasing its character and bitterness into the wort. You stand over the cauldron, paddle in hand, occasionally stirring to prevent it from boiling over. The combination of the ale- steak outside and the G or UIT- infusion happening inside represents the two sides of your business, the public promise and the secret, proprietary process that backs it up. One cannot exist without the other. Anyone can put out a stick, but only you can make this specific ale, with its familiar, comforting taste that your customers have come to expect. The steak is the sign, but what's happening now, in this bubbling pot, is the substance. The boil is complete. The GRU it has steeped, infusing the wort with its signature flavor and aroma. Now, the cauldron is swung away from the fire for the final, crucial cooling stage. The wort must be brought down to a lukewarm temperature before you can add the most magical ingredient of all, the yeast. Adding it while the wort is too hot would kill it instantly, wasting the entire batch. This cooling process is perhaps the most dangerous part of the entire brew day, the moment when your precious, sterilized wort is most vulnerable to infection from the air. You might pour the hot liquid into several wide, shallow wooden troughs or clay pans to maximize the surface area and speed up the cooling. You cover them with a clean linen cloth to keep out dust, insects, and, most importantly, the invisible airborne microbes you don't want. Some brewers, a bit more advanced, might have a cooler, a large, flat vessel specifically for this purpose. Whatever your method, it's a race against time and unseen enemies. As the wort cools, you prepare your yeast. You don't have a neat, vacuum-sealed packet of scientifically isolated yeast culture. Your yeast is a living heirloom. It's a portion of the thick, frothy scum, the barn, skimmed from the top of your last, successful batch of ale. You've kept it alive in a small pot in a cool corner of the house, feeding it occasionally with a little bit of flour and sugar to keep it active. This yeast is a unique, complex ecosystem of different strains of Saccharomyces, cerevisiae, and probably a few wild yeasts and bacteria that have coexisted for generations. This is another reason your ale tastes unique. The specific microbial blend of your house yeast is something no one else can replicate. The question of how medieval people first captured and propagated yeast is a fascinating one that historians still explore. For you, it's as simple and mysterious as saving a seed from a plant. Once the wort has cooled to the perfect temperature judged, as always, by dipping your hand or elbow in it, it's time for pitching. You gently stir your pot of living barm to life and then pour it into the cooled wort. You give the mixture a good, vigorous stir with your paddle. This aerates the wort, giving the yeast the oxygen it needs for its initial phase of reproduction. Now, you have ale, or at least, you have the beginnings of it. The yeast will now begin its slow, quiet work, consuming the sugars you so carefully created and transforming them into alcohol and carbon dioxide. You pour the yeast wort into your fermentation vessel, a large wooden barrel or cask. Laid on its side, you fill it up, but not to the very top, leaving space for the foamy head, the crust in, that will form during active fermentation. You plug the main hole of the barrel with a wooden bung, but you leave a smaller hole open, lightly stuffed with a clean cloth, to allow the CO2 to escape without the barrel exploding. And so begins another wait. For the first few hours, nothing seems to happen. But then, if you listen closely, you can hear a faint hissing sound. A layer of foam begins to build on the surface of the liquid inside the barrel. The fermentation has begun. The ale is alive. Just as this process starts, you hear the first knock on your door. Your ale- steak has done its job. It's a neighbor, a carpenter on his way home from a long day's work. He saw the steak this morning and has come for his first taste of the previous batch, which is now perfectly conditioned and ready to drink. You greet him and gesture for him to sit on the simple wooden bench that serves as your customer seating. Your front room is now officially an alehouse. You take a clean as minus possible pottery jug and go to the barrel from last week's brew. You pull the spigot and fill the jug with cool, cloudy, amber ale. There's no fancy bar, no beer taps. The service is simple and direct. You pour him a mug. He hands you a small silver coin, which you tuck into a leather pouch at your belt. He takes a long drink, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. Good, he grunts. This simple, 1- word review is high praise. He sips his ale while you go about your quiet work, cleaning the brewing equipment. Soon, another customer arrives, then another. They are laborers, farmers, other artisans. They talk in low voices, sharing the news of the day, complaining about the price of wool, telling a coarse joke. Your small, smoky room has transformed from a workshop into a social center, the quiet hub of the neighborhood. The new ale is bubbling away in its barrel, a promise for the future, while the old ale is fulfilling its purpose, bringing comfort, calories, and community to the end of a long day. The evening wears on, and your front room is now comfortably full. The air is thick with the scent of wood smoke, red wool, and the sharp, bready aroma of fresh ale. The low murmur of conversation is a familiar soundtrack to your evenings. Most of your customers pay with a coin or two, but not everyone has ready cash. This is where the second, equally important part of your record minus keeping comes into play. It's a system of trust, memory, and a piece of chalk. A regular customer, a pseudonymous unnamed Thomas, drains his mug and gestures for another. HE's been working on the new extension of the parish church and won't be paid until the end of the week. He catches your eye and gives a slight nod towards the wall behind you. You understand completely. You take a small piece of chalk, a lump of soft limestone you keep on a ledge by the hearth and turn to the daub wall. Next to the hearth is a section of wall that is darker and smoother than the rest. This is your accounts ledger. It's covered in a complex series of white lines and symbols. You find the section marked with a crude drawing of a hammer and chisel. Thomas mark. Since many of your customers, including Thomas, are illiterate, they use a personal symbol to identify their tally. You add a single vertical line next to his mark. Each line represents one measure of ale. When HE's had 5, you'll draw a diagonal line through the first 4, creating the familiar 5- bar gate system that has been used for counting for centuries. This is your credit system. It's simple, public, and remarkably effective. The tally is there for all to see, which creates a certain social pressure to pay one's debts. Thomas can see his tally growing, and so can his neighbors. It's a powerful incentive to settle up on payday. This system, known as a tally, was incredibly common for small scale transactions in the medieval world. While kings and great merchants use notched sticks or vellum scrolls for their accounts, your chalk marks are the grassroots version of the same principle. Historians often debate the extent of the cash economy versus the credit or barter economy at the village level. For you, it's not a debate. It's a fluid reality. You operate in all three simultaneously. You take coin when it's offered. You accept credit from trusted regulars. And you might even trade a few jugs of ale for a basket of eggs or some mending work from a neighbor. Your business is built on a complex web of these social and economic relationships. Your chalk marks are the physical manifestation of that web. You scan the wall. There's a section for Agnes, the weaver, marked with a small shuttle. She has 2 marks, which shall pay off with a yard of linen cloth later. There's one for young Will, the blacksmith's apprentice, marked with an X. HE's good for it, but sometimes slow to pay. You make a mental note to have a quiet word with him if he doesn't settle his tab by the weekend. This public accounting has its risks. A dishonest customer might try to argue the count. A sudden death could leave a debt unpaid forever. and the marks themselves are fragile. A brush of a sleeve or a splash of water could literally wipe out your financial records. But in a small, tight-knit community where everyone knows everyone else's business, the system works more often than it fails. It's based on reputation, both yours and your customers. You extend credit because you trust them, and they pay their debts to maintain their good standing in the community and, more importantly, to ensure they can get a drink next week. As you turn back from the wall, you see your daughter watching you, her eyes wide with concentration. You hand her the piece of chalk. She goes to a lower section of the wall you've designated for her and begins to practice making her own lines, mimicking your actions. You are not just teaching her to brew, you are teaching her to count, to manage credit, and to run a business. This is her education, happening right here on the smoky wall of your home. The chalk is her quill, the wall her slate. It's a lesson in medieval finance, taught without a single number being written down. The evening is in full swing. The benches are occupied, and the conversation flows as freely as your ale. It's in this comfortable, familiar atmosphere that the door swings open, causing a brief hush to fall over the room. Standing in the doorway is a man you instantly recognize, and your stomach tightens just a little. It's John, the official Connor for this ward of the town. His is a role of immense local importance, an official elected or appointed by the manor court or town council. His sole job is to enforce the assize of bread and ale, a medieval law that regulated the price, weight, and quality of these two essential staples. He is, in essence, a medieval trading standards officer, and his visit is both routine and nerve-racking. While his title is Connor, a word which means taster or tester, his inspection is what every alewife in town reads. He doesn't smile. His face is all business. He walks into the center of the room, his eyes scanning everything: the cleanliness of your floor, the state of your mugs, the faces of your customers. Everyone knows why he is here. He walks over to the barrel of ale you are currently serving. Without a word, you take a fresh mug, rinse it with a bit of water for show, and draw him a full measure. You hand it to him, your expression neutral, betraying none of the anxiety you feel. He begins his ritual. First, he looks at the ale, holding the mug up to the firelight. Best checking the color and clarity. Is it bright and appealing, or is it murky and full of sediment? A cloudy ale might suggest it's too new, or worse, that it's beginning to spoil. Yours is good, it has settled well and has a pleasing amber hue. He nods slightly, a small victory for you. Next, he smells it. He takes a deep, long sniff, his brow furrowed in concentration. Searching for the sour, vinegary scent of an infection or the stale, musty smell of a bad batch. Also, perhaps unconsciously. Judging your G, are you at blend? Does it smell wholesome and durable? Or is there a hint of something unpleasant or forbidden? The scent is clean and fragrant. Another hurdle cleared. Finally, the taste. He takes a substantial mouthful, not just a sip. He swirls it around his mouth, his cheeks puffing out. Judging the body, the flavor, the strength. Is it watery and thin, suggesting you've over-sparged the grains or diluted it to stretch your profits? Is the bitterness of the G, are you at balanced with the sweetness of the malt? Does it taste sound? There's a famous, though likely apocryphal, story about how Connors tested ale. The legend says they would pour a small amount of the ale onto a wooden bench and then sit on the puddle while wearing leather breeches. They would then finish their drink. If their breeches stuck to the bench when they stood up, it meant the ale had a high sugar content and was therefore good and strong and not watered down. Historians are highly skeptical that this was ever a standard practice. It seems impractical and, frankly, sticky, but it speaks to the core of the Connor's job, ensuring the public was getting a good, honest product for their money. John swallows the ale and stands there in silence for a moment that feels like an eternity. The entire room is quiet, waiting for his verdict. He looks at you, then at the mug, then back at you. It is good, he says, his voice flat and official. A collective, silent sigh of relief seems to pass through the room. He then declares, the price is fair for this quality. His pronouncement is legally binding. If he had found your ale to be poor, he could have ordered you to lower the price. If it was truly bad, he could have confiscated the entire batch, pouring it into the street, a public humiliation and a devastating financial loss. He could even fine you. But you have passed. Your reputation is officially endorsed. He finishes the mug, sets it down, and turns to leave. His visit is over as quickly as it began. As the door closes behind him, the lively chatter in the room immediately resumes, perhaps even a little louder than before. Your customers are reassured. They are drinking officially sanctioned quality ale. A few of them give you a nod of approval. You've passed the test. The knot in your stomach finally dissolves. The ale minus Connor shadow has passed over, and your small business is safe, at least until his next random visit. As you refill a customer's mug, you watch the other women in the room. There's Agnes, the weaver, discussing an order with a merchant. There's old Elspeth, whose husband is a baker, sharing gossip with a neighbor. In this moment, your alehouse perfectly illustrates a fundamental truth of your time brewing, and the selling of ale is overwhelmingly women's work. It is a woman's craft, a natural extension of her domestic duties in managing the household's food and drink. For centuries, the title brewer was almost anonymous with women. In town records and legal documents, women are identified as brewsters or alewives. It was one of the few respectable and potentially lucrative professions open to them. A woman could practice this trade from her own home, allowing her to earn an income while still raising children and managing the endless tasks of the household. Your life is a perfect example of this. You are a mother, a wife, a cook, a cleaner, and a business owner, all operating out of the same single, smoky room. This dominance, however, is beginning to face a new unorganized challenge. You've heard the whispers, the talk among the men who frequent your alehouse. In the larger towns and cities, men are starting to organize themselves into professional brewers' guilds. These guilds are formal associations that aim to control the trade. They set standards, regulate apprenticeships, and use their collective power to lobby town councils for favorable laws. Then they are, almost exclusively, for men. The very concept is foreign to you. Your craft was not learned through a formal apprenticeship with a guild master. It was learned at your mother's side, through observation, imitation, and endless repetition. Your knowledge is practical, sensory, and traditional. The guilds, however, speak a different language. They talk of charters, regulations, and membership fees. They are turning a domestic craft into a commercial industry. Why is this shift happening? Historians still debate the precise reasons. Some argue it was part of a broader trend of professionalization and the gendering of work, where men moved to control the most profitable sectors of any trade. As brewing became more commercial and larger, in scale moving from the home to dedicated brew houses, men with access to more capital began to dominate. Others suggest that the introduction of hops, which created a more stable product that could be stored longer and traded over greater distances, favored larger scale, male dominated operations. You see the early signs of this change in your own town. A man named Walter, a wealthy merchant, has recently built a large brew house on the edge of town. He doesn't brew himself. He employs men to do the heavy lifting and has started producing large quantities of hopped beer, a different product from your traditional G or Hewitt ale. He sells it not by the mug in his front room, but by the barrel to other taverns. He is a capitalist, an industrialist in miniature, and his business model represents a threat to your way of life. For now, the threat is distant. Your customers are loyal. They come for the familiarity of your GR Hewitt ale, for the comfort of your hearth, and for the community you foster. They don't want Walter's bitter, standardized beer. They want your ale, the ale their fathers and grandfathers drank. But you can feel the tide beginning to turn. The guilds lobby for regulations that favor their members, making it harder for independent alewives like you to compete. They might petition the council to require expensive new equipment that only their members can afford, or to impose taxes on GRU to promote the use of hops. You are living through a slow-moving economic and social revolution. The woman's craft of brewing is being redefined, professionalized, and slowly taken over by men. You stand on the cusp of this change. You are the tradition. The guilds are the future. For tonight, however, your world is secure. You are the provider, the brewster, the heart of this small community. You are in charge. But a quiet, nagging thought lingers in the back of your mind for how much longer? The new batch of ale, the one you pitched the yeast into earlier, has been fermenting quietly in its barrel for a couple of days. The initial, vigorous bubbling has subsided, and it should be entering a calmer, secondary fermentation. It's time to check on it, to see how it's progressing. You take a small wooden nest pile and pull it from the tasting hole in the cask. A puff of CO2 hisses out. You catch a little of the young, cloudy ale in a mug and bring it to your lips for a preliminary taste. And your heart sinks. It's wrong. It's horribly, undeniably wrong. Instead of the clean, slightly sweet, and bready flavor of young ale, your tongue is met with a sharp, distinct sourness, like unrippy apples or vinegar. It's the unmistakable taste of failure. A bacterial infection has taken hold. Somewhere in the process, despite all your care, something went awry. This is the ever-present nightmare of the medieval brewer. Without an understanding of microbiology, infection seemed like a cruel magic, a punishment from a fickle god or the work of a mischievous sprite. Perhaps the wort didn't cool fast enough, allowing airborne bacteria to multiply before your yeast could dominate. Perhaps your yeast culture itself was contaminated. Maybe the barrel wasn't scrubbed clean enough from the last batch. The exact cause is a mystery you will never solve. Historians and microbiologists can now identify the specific culprits, likely lactobacillus or sectobacter, but for you, it is simply a disaster. Your first feeling is a wave of pure frustration. All that work, the hauling of water, the breaking malting, the careful mashing and boiling has been for nothing. This entire batch, gallons of potential income, is ruined. You cannot, under any circumstances, sell this. The ale-cotter would have you fined and shamed, and your customers, after one sip, would abandon you for Margaret down the street. Your hard-1 reputation would be shattered. That you are a medieval woman, and waste is a sin. Your entire life is geared towards thrift and resourcefulness. Panicking or despairing is a luxury you cannot afford. You stand there for a long moment, the sour taste still in your mouth, your mind racing through the possibilities. What can be done? The ale cannot be saved, but can the liquid be repurposed? The first and most obvious option is to let the process continue. The Sectobacter bacteria, if that's what it is, will continue to convert the alcohol into acetic acid. In a few weeks, you won't have sour ale. You will have a barrel of ale minus vinegar, or ale gare. While not as valuable as ale, vinegar is still a useful household commodity. It can be used for pickling vegetables from your garden, for cleaning, or in small amounts in cooking to add a sharp tang to a pottage. You could trade it, or sell it at a much reduced price. It's a significant financial loss, but not a total one. Another possibility, though less likely, is to use it for distillation. The art of distilling was known in the medieval period, though often practiced by apothecaries and monks rather than common alewives. If you had access to a still and alembic, you could theoretically distill the sour ale to produce a crude, fiery spirit. This was not common practice for someone in your position, but the knowledge existed. It's a long shot. Your most likely course of action is the vinegar route. It's the simplest and most practical solution. You push the S-pile back into the barrel, but this time you leave it loose, allowing oxygen to get in, which will encourage the vinegar minus producing bacteria. You roll the barrel to a corner of the room, away from the new batch you will have to start brewing tomorrow. It is now a different kind of project, a salvage operation. This constant threat of spoilage is a fundamental economic reality for you. It's why a good, consistent brewer was so highly valued. Your profit margins are thin, and a single failed batch like this can wipe out the earnings of 2 or 3 successful ones. It underscores the precariances of your livelihood. You are not just a craftsperson, you are a gambler, wagering your time and expensive raw materials against the invisible forces of the microbial world. Tonight, you have lost the bet as you go back to serving your customers from the good barrel. No one can see your disappointment. You keep your expression calm and your movements steady, but inside, you are already recalculating. You'll have to buy more barley sooner than you planned. You'll have to work a double brew day to make up for the lost stock. The rhythm of your life has been disrupted. A batch is turned, and you, with weary resilience, must turn with it. A few days have passed since the disaster of the sour batch. You have already started a new brew. Your movements even more careful and deliberate than usual. Your mind replaying every step, trying to pinpoint the source of the failure. As you serve the last of the previous good batch to your evening customers, a piece of gossip reaches your ears that adds a new layer of pressure to your week. It comes from a talkative neighbor who leans over the rough-hewn table and speaks in a conspiratorial whisper. Did you hear? Margaret down the street. She's selling her common ale for $0.01 a gallon. $0.01 a gallon. That is a full half-penny cheaper than your price. The news hits you with a dull thud. This isn't just friendly competition anymore. It's a price war. Margaret, your main rival, the alewife with a fancy broom for an ale- steak, has made an aggressive move. A half-penny might seem like nothing, but to your customers' laborers, farmhands, and artisans living on the margins, it's a significant saving. It's the difference between affording an extra loaf of bread for their family or not. Your mind immediately starts to race. How can she afford to sell it so cheaply? Is her barley cheaper than yours? Unlikely. You both buy from the same farmers. Does she have a secret, more efficient process? Perhaps. Or is she cutting corners? This is the most likely, and most worrying possibility. Maybe she is using less malt, resulting in a weaker, thinner ale. Maybe she is stretching her batch with extra water after the boil, a deceptive practice known as lacing. Or perhaps she is using lower quality GRU herbs, foraged from a less desirable patch of land. Whatever the reason, her move puts you in an impossible position. You have 3 choices, and none of them are good. First, you could ignore it. You could hold your price, relying on the superior quality and taste of your ale to retain your customers. You have a good reputation. People trust your brew. Many of your regulars come for the familiar taste and the comfort of your hearth. They might be willing to pay a little extra for the quality they know, but can you count on that loyalty when every penny matters? It's a huge gamble. Second, you could match her price. You could lower your own ale to $0.01 a gallon. This would keep you competitive and prevent your customers from flocking to herd, or that it would slash your already thin profit margins to almost nothing. After accounting for the cost of the barley, the GRU, the fuel for the fire, and the value of your own intensive labor, you would be working for next to nothing. You might not lose customers, but you would lose the income your family depends on. Third, you could try to compete on a different level. You can't beat her price, so perhaps you can emphasize your quality. You could brew a special, stronger batch, a best ale and market it as a premium product, worthy of a higher price. This is a strategy of differentiation. You cede the market for cheap ale to her and focus on the high end. But is there a large enough market for expensive ale in your small neighborhood? It's another significant risk. This quiet, strategic dilemma is the heart of medieval small business. There are no marketing consultants or business journals to guide you. You rely on your intuition, your deep knowledge of your community, and your gut feeling about your rival. The question of how medieval artisans and shopkeepers made these kinds of strategic decisions is a fascinating area for historians, pieced together from court records about trade disputes and guild regulations. For you, it's a deeply personal and stressful calculation. You look around your small alehouse. You know these people. You know their families, their troubles, their small joys. You know that John the carpenter appreciates a strong, flavorful ale after a hard day, and might pay more for it. You also know that young Will the apprentice counts his pennies carefully and will likely go wherever the ale is cheapest. For now, you do nothing. You continue to sell your current batch at the established price. But as you serve your customers, you are listening more intently than ever. You are gathering market intelligence. What are people saying about Margaret's ale? Is it as good as yours? Is the saving worth it? The answers to these questions, whispered over mugs of your ale, will determine your next move. This isn't a battle fought with swords, but with pennies and pints, in the quiet, competitive arena of the neighborhood market. The pressure from Margaret's price cut is a constant, nagging worry in the back of your mind. As you plan your next brew, you decide on a strategic response, one that leans into quality rather than trying to compete on price. Your opportunity has a name: the upcoming feast day of St. Giles, the patron saint of beggars, cripples, and blacksmiths. A major feast day like this is a time of rare and precious leisure for the common folk. It's a day of no work, of church services, and, most importantly, of celebration. And celebration requires good, strong ale. This will not be your standard brew. This will be a best ale, a double ale, or what some might call a bride minus ale for its association with weddings and special occasions. The process starts, as always, with the grain, but this time you will use more of it. You'll increase the ratio of malt to water, creating a richer, more concentrated first wort. This is the simplest way to increase the potential alcohol content and flavor. It's an expensive choice, as it uses up more of your precious barley, but it's essential for a premium product. You are even more meticulous than usual during the mashing process, ensuring the temperature is perfect to extract the maximum amount of sugar. When you taste the first wort from this batch, it is noticeably thicker and more syrupy than your everyday brew. This is a good sign. The foundation is strong. The real difference, however, comes with the GRUit. For this special batch, you will use your standard blend of bog, myrtle, and yarrow, but you will augment it with some of your rarest and most expensive ingredients. You unlock the small chest where you keep your treasures and pull out a tiny, tightly sealed pouch. The scent that emerges when you open it is exotic and powerful. It's a small handful of juniper berries, purchased at great expense from a traveling merchant. They will add a clean, piney, and slightly peppery note to the ale, a flavor that signals luxury. You also add a few dried elderflowers, which will impart a delicate, sweet, floral aroma. And finally, the ultimate extravagance: a tiny, paper-minus thin sliver of dried ginger root. The sharp, warming spice of ginger is a flavor associated with wealth and faraway lands. It's a taste that is both startling and deeply pleasurable to a palate accustomed to simpler, earthier flavors. The question of how extensive the spice trade wasn't how far down the social ladder these exotic tastes penetrated is a subject of ongoing academic research. For your customers, a hint of ginger in their ale is the absolute peak of affordable luxury. You boil this special wort with the enhanced GRUit blend, the house filling with an unusually complex and enticing aroma. When it comes time to ferment, you use only the healthiest, creamiest part of your yeast culture, the barm from the very top of the last good batch. You want a strong, vigorous fermentation to ensure a high alcohol content and a clean finish. As the ale ferments, You let it condition in the barrel for a few days longer than usual. This allows the flavors to meld in the ale to clear, resulting in a smoother, more refined drink. This is not the cloudy, rough minus ready ale of everyday consumption. This is your masterpiece. On the morning of the feast day, you don't just put out your mole minus steak, you adorn it. You tie a garland of fresh ivy and bright wildflowers around the brew. This is a special signal, an advertisement that something different, something better, is on offer today. As people return from the morning church service, their spirits high and their day free, they see your decorated steak. Curiosity draws them in. You offer the first taste to John the carpenter, one of your most discerning regulars. You charge him a full 2 pennies for the mug, double your usual price. He eyes the price, then the ale. He takes a sip, his eyes widen slightly. He tastes the familiar comfort of your brew, but underneath it is the surprising notes of juniper and the warm kick of ginger. He takes another, longer drink and nods slowly. Worth it, he says. The word spreads quickly. People are willing to pay more for a taste of luxury on a special day. They come not just for a drink, but for an experience. Your alehouse becomes the center of the neighborhood's modest celebration. You sell less ale in terms of volume, but your profits for the day are higher than ever. You have successfully navigated the threat from Margaret. You didn't fight her on price. You elevated your craft. You reminded the community that while anyone can sell cheap ale, only you can make this ale. It's a quiet but decisive victory, reinforcing that a good name and a reputation for quality are the most valuable assets you will ever own. The success of your feast minus day ale has solidified your reputation, and your small front room settles back into its familiar evening rhythm. As you wipe down the rough wooden table, you pause to listen. To an outsider, it might sound like a low, unintelligible babble of voices, but to you, it is the sound of information. Your alehouse is not just a place to drink. It is the town's primary news hub, its living newspaper. In a world without printing presses, radio, or internet, news travels at the speed of a person walking or a horse riding, and it is disseminated face minus to minus face in communal spaces like the churchyard, the marketplace, and, perhaps most importantly, the alehouse. Here, over mugs of your ale, information is exchanged, debated, and embellished. You are the proprietor of the local information exchange. Tonight, a traveling peddler sits in the corner, his pack on the floor beside him. He has just come from a larger town several days' journey away. His words are gold. He brings news of a new tax being levied by the king's sheriff, a rumor that causes a round of grumbling and anxious muttering. He speaks of a miracle reported at a shrine 2 counties over, a story that is met with a mix of awe and skepticism. He even carries word of the latest fashions from London, information that is of great interest to the weaver, Agnes, who is always looking for new patterns to try. The accuracy of this news is, of course, highly questionable. How much of it is fact and how much is exaggeration from being told and retold along the road is a puzzle historians constantly grapple with. For the people here, it is simply the news. Closer to home, a farmer discusses the state of the crops. The spring has been too wet, he complains, and he fears some of the wheat fields might be waterlogged. This is not idle chatter. It is vital economic information. The price of bread for the entire town depends on the success of that harvest. A blacksmith and a stonemason are finalizing a deal in another corner. The blacksmith will forge a new set of high-minus quality chisels for the mason. Then in return, the mason will help prepare the blacksmith's crumbling chimney. The deal is sealed not with a written contract, but with a shared mug of your ale and a handshake. Your alehouse is their boardroom. You are not just a passive observer in this flow of information. You are a central node. People talk to you. They ask you what you've heard. As you move from table to table, refiling mugs, you absorb it all. You learn who is hiring, who is looking for work, whose daughter is ready for marriage, and whose sow just had a litter of piglets. This information is power. It allows you to anticipate the needs of your community. You know when to brew a stronger batch because a big construction project is starting and the workers will be thirsty. You know when money is tight because the harvest was poor, and you might need to be more generous with your chalk minus mark credit. The ale itself acts as a social lubricant, easing tongues and encouraging conversation. The gentle warmth of the alcohol lowers inhibitions just enough for people to speak more freely than they might in the cold light of day. It fosters a sense of community unshared experience. Here, in the warm, smoky confines of your home, a man can complain about the lord of the manor or the parish priest without immediate fear of reprisal, though one must always be careful who is listening. Your role is a delicate one. You are a confidant, a silent keeper of 100 small secrets. You must be discreet. Repeating the wrong piece of gossip could start a feud. Showing favorite minus-ism could alienate customers. You cultivate an air of friendly neutrality, a safe harbor in the sea of village politics. As the evening winds down and your customers begin to drift home, you are left with more than just a few coins in your pouch. Your head is full of the day's intelligence, a tapestry of personal stories, economic data, political rumors, and social arrangements. You are more informed about the state of your small world than anyone else in the town, perhaps even more than the priest or the reeve. They have official authority, but you have something else, a direct connection to the heart of the community, a connection forged over countless mugs of your home-made ale. One evening, a man you don't recognize pushes open your door. He's not a local. His clothes are different, and he carries himself with the confident air of a traveler who has seen many towns. He's a merchant. You surmise, perhaps trading in wool or salt. He orders a mug of your best ale, the one left over from the St. Giles feast day. He drinks it slowly, thoughtfully, and you can tell he is a man who knows his drink. After a few minutes, he calls you over. He compliments your brewing, which pleases you. Then, he lowers his voice and asks a question that startles you. Have you ever considered brewing with hops? He reaches into a leather satchel and pulls out a small cloth bag. He opens it, and a pungent, resinous, and deeply unfamiliar aroma wafts out. It's sharp, green, and slightly citrusy. He pours a few of the contents into his palm. They are small, light, cone-minus shaped flowers, dried and delicate. From Flanders, he says. They call this beer. It keeps much longer than your Gruit ale, and the bitterness. It is very fashionable in the big cities. You stare at the strange little flowers. You have heard whispers of them, of this new type of drink called beer. Most of what you've heard has been negative. The other alewives in town call hops a pollutant, an adulterant. They say it's a harsh, unwholesome sweet that ruins the true taste of ale. Some local guilds have even tried to ban its use, claiming it's a foreign corruption. There is a genuine cultural resistance to this new ingredient. The merchant sees the skepticism on your face. Think of it, he says, his voice persuasive. An ale that doesn't sour in a week. You could brew larger batches. You could even sell barrels to taverns in the next town over. This, he says, tapping the hops in his hand, is the future. His words are both tempting and deeply unsettling. Your entire craft is based on the tradition of Gruit, your secret recipe, your knowledge of local herbs. The very soul of your product is tied to that ancient blend. To abandon it for this foreign flower would be to abandon your identity as a brewer. It feels like a betrayal of your heritage, of the knowledge passed down to you by your mother. And yet, the practical advantages are undeniable. The memory of your last soured batch is still fresh and painful. An ale that keeps for weeks, even months. It seems like an impossible miracle. The potential for expanding your business, for achieving a level of financial security you've only dreamed of, is laid out before you in the palm of this stranger's hand. The debate over hops versus GRU, it is one of the most significant turning points in brewing history, and you are living right on its fault line. Historians see it as a shift from a local, female-dominated craft to a more commercial, male-dominated industry. Hops allowed for centralization and mass production in a way that perishable G or Hewitt ale never could. It was an agent of profound economic and social change. You are wary. The taste is too bitter, you say, echoing the common complaint. It is an acquired taste. The merchant replies smoothly, though once acquired, it makes the sweet GRU ales seem cloying and childish. It is the taste of the modern world. He offers to sell you a small bag, enough for a single experimental batch. The price is high, but not impossibly so. You hesitate. It feels dangerous, like inviting a fox into your henhouse. Your customers are used to your ale. What would they think of this strange, bitter new concoction? Would they embrace it, or would they abandon you completely? After a long moment of internal debate, you make a decision. You shake your head. No, you say firmly. My customers like my ale as it is. The merchant shrugs, not unkindly. As you wish, he says, pouring the hops back into his satchel. But keep it in mind, the world is changing. He finishes his ale, pays his coin, and leaves, taking the scent of the future with him. You are left standing in your familiar, smoky alehouse, surrounded by the comforting traditions you know. You have made your choice. You have chosen to remain an alewife, not to become a beer maker. You have defended your craft against the intrusion of the modern world. But as you close the door behind the merchant, a sliver of doubt remains. Was it a wise decision, or a foolish one? The whispers of hops are getting louder every year, and you wonder how long your small world of GRU can hold out against them. The relentless physical toll of your profession is a constant, unwelcome companion. Today, it's a deep, throbbing ache in your lower back, a souvenir from hauling the heavy sacks of barley and countless buckets of water. After the last customer has left and the door is barred for the night, you finally allow yourself a moment of rest and self-scare. But your medicine cabinet is not a tidy box of pills and creams. It is the small, chaotic patch of green earth behind your house, your herb garden. You limp out into the cool night air, guided by the moonlight. Your garden is not a place of manicured beauty. It's a practical, working plot, a jumble of herbs, vegetables, and flowers growing together in a sort of organized chaos. Tia, nestled between rows of onions and leafy greens, are the plants that form the basis of your domestic pharmacy. This knowledge of herbal remedies is another essential skill for a medieval woman, as vital as knowing how to cook or mend. Access to a university-trained physician was an impossible luxury for someone of your class. You are your family's doctor. Your back needs a poultice. You head for a large, leafy plant with broad, slightly fuzzy leaves comfrey. It's known colloquially as knit bone, and its reputation for healing sprains, bruises, and broken bones is legendary. Whether it truly knits bones is a matter for modern science to debate, but you know from experience that it provides powerful relief from muscle aches. The historical use of comfrey is well documented, a staple in monastic and household medical practice for centuries. You carefully pick a few of the largest leaves, your movements slow and stiff. Back inside, you mash them with a bit of hot water and a handful of oat flour to create a thick, grained, steaming paste. It doesn't look appealing. That a warm, earthy smell is comforting. You spread this warm poultice onto a piece of clean linen, lie down on your straw mattress, then carefully apply the compress to the aching part of your back. The warmth seeps into your muscles, and a gentle, soothing relief begins to spread through you. It's not a cure, but it's a comfort, and right now, comfort is everything. Your garden holds remedies for a host of other common ailments. There is a patch of chamomile. It's small, daisy-minus, like flowers ready to be dried and steeped into a tea to calm an upset stomach, or soothe a fussy child to sleep. There is peppermint, which you use for headaches and indigestion. A pungent clump of thyme serves as a cough remedy when boiled with honey. And, of course, there is yarrow, the same herb you use in your gruet, which you also keep on hand in its dried form to pack into small cuts and wounds to stop the bleeding. This knowledge is not from books. It is oral tradition, passed from your mother to you, just as you are passing it to your own daughter. You know which plants are safe, which are dangerous, when to harvest them for maximum potency, and how to prepare them. You know that foxglove, with its beautiful, though minus-shaped flowers, is a deadly poison, though you don't know that future generations will extract the heart medicine digitalis from it. You just know to leave it alone. This is the reality of healthcare for the vast majority of the medieval population. It was a complex system of folk medicine, herbalism, and practical first aid, managed almost exclusively by women within the home, while learned male physicians in faraway universities were debating the theories of Galen and the Four Humors. You were dealing with the practical realities of a sore back, a colicky baby, or a festering splinter. The efficacy of these remedies is a topic of great interest for medical historians, who find that while some were based on pure superstition, many, like willow bark for pain as source of salicylic acid, the basis of aspirin, had real pharmacological effects. Lying there in the dark, with the warm, earthy poultice seizing the pain in your back, you are a testament to this tradition. You are not just a brewer, an accountant, and a taverner. You are a pharmacist and a healer. Your life is a constant, interwoven practice of different kinds of alchemy, transforming grain into ale, herbs into medicine, and a simple one-room house into a place of sustenance, community, and healing. The ache in your back is the price of your labor, but the knowledge in your head and the plants in your garden are the tools of your survival. The years are beginning to leave their mark. The ache in your back is more frequent. The mornings feel colder, and the sacks of barley seem heavier. Your daughter is no longer a small child playing with a wooden doll on the floor. She is a young woman now, on the cusp of adulthood, her hands strong and her eyes quick and observant. The time has come to transition from simply having her help with chores to actively passing down the craft. This is the most important record minus keeping of all, inscribing your knowledge, not on a wall or a stick, but onto the next generation. Her apprenticeship does not begin with a formal declaration. It begins with a gesture. One morning, as you prepare to crush the dried malt, you hand her the heavy stone roller. You do it. You say simply, "She has seen you perform this task 1,000 times, but doing it is another matter." Her first attempts are clumsy. She pushes too hard, grinding the malt into a fine powder, or not hard enough, leaving whole kernels untouched. You don't scold her. You place your hands over hers, guiding her movements, letting her feel the right amount of pressure, the gentle rolling motion required to crack the husks without pulverizing the contents. This is how the knowledge is transferred. It is somatic, tactile, and largely non-verbal. There is no textbook, no written recipe with precise measurements on timings. The recipe is a living thing, a sequence of sensory cues and physical actions. You are teaching her a language spoken with the hands, the nose, and the tongue. You have her feel the germinating barley on the malting floor, teaching her to recognize the subtle shift in temperature that signals it's time to turn it. You make her judge the growth of the invisible aqua spire, pressing a kernel between her thumb and forefinger until she can identify the tall-stale ridge. Many historians wonder how these complex skills were taught without widespread literacy, but the answer lies in this hands-on, multi-sensory pedagogy. It was a master-and apprentice model, played out in the domestic sphere between mother and daughter. When it comes to the gruet, you finally share your secrets. You take her into the woods with you, pointing out the feathery leaves of yarrow, the waxy catkins of bog myrtle. You teach her which plants to pick and, more importantly, which to avoid. You let her smell the crushed leaves, fixing the unique scent of each herb in her memory. Back home, you allow her to measure the pinches and handfuls, correcting her proportions with a slight shake of your head or a guiding hand. The most difficult lesson is judging the temperature of the water for the mash. You make her dip her elbow into the cauldron, again and again, over many brewing sessions. At first, every temperature just feels hot, but slowly, she learns to discern the subtle differences. Feel that? You'll say, that's too hot. It will scorch the grain. Or, this is good. This is the one we want. She is calibrating her own body to be a thermometer, internalizing the data points through repeated, painful trial and error. During one brew day, you let her take the lead entirely. You sit on a stool by the hearth, watching. You only intervene when she is about to make a critical mistake. She is nervous, her movements hesitant. She adds the malt to the water too quickly, causing clumps to form. You let her struggle with the mash rake for a moment before quietly advising her to stir more slowly. She almost lets the boil minus over. Then you have to shout a quick warning. It is a stressful day for both of you. The resulting ale from her first solo batch is drinkable, but it's not quite right. It's a little thin, and the G/U balance is slightly off. Your regulars notice the difference. Did you change something? John the carpenter asks, a slight frown on his face. You simply smile and say, a new season, a new taste. You protect her, allowing her the space to learn without facing public criticism. This process of succession is vital for the survival of the family economy. Your skill is your legacy, the most valuable inheritance you can give your daughter. It will empower her, giving her a trade that can support her own future family. Whether she marries or is widowed, you are equipping her for survival in a world that offers few economic opportunities for women. This informal education, the passing down of craft and business acumen from mother to daughter, was the bedrock of female enterprise for centuries, a quiet but powerful engine of social and economic stability. The turning of the seasons dictates the rhythm of your life as much as any church calendar. The arrival of winter brings a unique set of challenges and changes to your brewing process. The world outside your door is now a landscape of gray skies, biting winds, and frozen mud. The cold is no longer just a pre-minus dawn annoyance. It is a constant, oppressive presence that seeps into every corner of your home and your work. Brewing in the cold is a different art form. The first and most obvious challenge is the water. The walk to the town well is now a treacherous journey over icy ground. Sometimes, a thin layer of ice has formed on the surface of the water in the well itself, and the winch rope is stiff and frozen, painful to the touch even through your woolen mittens. The water you haul back is near freezing, which means you need to burn significantly more fuel to bring it to a boil. Wood and peat, which were easier to gather in the summer, are now precious, rationed commodities. Every log you place on the fire is a careful calculation of cost versus necessity. The malting process becomes a delicate, high-stakes game. Spreading the germinating barley on the cold floor of your house is a constant battle. The grain is sluggish, reluctant to sprout in the chill. You have to keep it closer to the hearth, in a carefully chosen spot that is warm but not hot enough to dry it out prematurely. You have to turn it more often, your hands aching from the cold. Damp grain. The entire process takes longer, demanding even more patience than usual. But the greatest challenge of the winter brew is the yeast. Your living, heirloom culture is a creature of comfort. It likes warmth. In the cold, it becomes sluggish and slow. Fermentation, which might take 3 or 4 days in the summer, can stretch to a week or more in the winter. This is a dangerous period. The slow start gives undesirable wild yeasts and bacteria a greater opportunity to take hold and spoil the batch. Historians who study the history of brewing know that brewers in colder climates empirically developed or selected yeast strains that performed better at lower temperatures, the ancestors of modern lager yeasts. But for you, It is simply a matter of working with the stubborn family of microbes you have. To combat the cold, you must swaddle your fermenting barrel like a newborn child. You wrap it in every spare piece of cloth you own, old blankets, worn minus out tunics, sacks stuffed with straw. You place it in the warmest, most draft minus free corner of the room, right by the hearth. At night, you and your family huddle closer to the fire, sharing your warmth not just with each other, but with the slumbering ale. The resulting winter ale is different. The slow, cold fermentation often produces a brew with a cleaner, smoother flavor profile, with fewer of the fruity esters that a hot, fast fermentation creates. It might also be slightly stronger, as the longer process allows the yeast to convert more of the sugars. Your customers have come to expect this seasonal variation. They look forward to the winter brew as a hearty, warming drink to ward off the chill. The business side of your alehouse also changes. Fewer travelers are on the roads, so your clientele is almost exclusively locals. But they linger longer. With the fields frozen and many outdoor trades at a standstill, men have more time on their hands. Your smoky, warm room becomes an even more important sanctuary, a refuge from the cold and the boredom of the long winter nights. They huddle around the fire, their mugs of dark, strong ale warming their hands and their spirits. In a way, winter is when your craft is most appreciated. The warmth from your fire, the calories in your ale, the community in your front room, these things are not just pleasantries. They are essential tools for survival. You are providing a vital service, a shield against the harshest season of the year. As you look at the barrel, wrapped in its thick blankets, you feel a sense of kinship with the sluggish yeast inside, both of you working slowly, patiently, and stubbornly against the encroaching cold. One brisk winter evening, a stranger, clearly a man of some means by the quality of his cloak, takes shelter in your alehouse from a sudden, sharp sleet storm. H.E.S. not a merchant, but a clerk, perhaps, traveling on business for the local lord. He orders a mug of your winter brew and, after a few sips, he catches your eye and gives you a respectful nod. This is good. Honest ale, he says. I passed other steaks on my way here, but a man in the market told me to seek out yours. He said your brew is always sound. This simple compliment, delivered by a stranger, encapsulates the most valuable asset you possess, an asset you have spent a lifetime building your reputation. In a small, close knit community, a good name is worth more than gold. It is the invisible currency that underpins your entire business. Why is your ale trusted? It's not because of any fancy advertising or branding. It's because of consistency. Your customers know what to expect when they walk through your door. They know the ale will have that familiar, comforting taste of your specific GRU blend. They know it will be strong enough to be satisfying, but not so strong as to be debilitating. They know it will be clean, free from the sour tang of spoilage. In a world full of uncertainty, you provide a reliable, predictable pleasure. This consistency is born from your meticulous, repetitive labor. It comes from feeling the barley, from knowing the exact moment to halt the germination, from judging the temperature of the mash water with your own skin, from the unwavering ritual of your process. Every successful batch you produce is another brick in the wall of your reputation. Every failed batch, like the sour one from months ago, is a crack in that wall that must be painstakingly repaired. Your good name extends beyond the quality of the drink itself. You are known to be an honest woman. Your customers know that you don't lace your ale by watering it down. They know that the measure you pour is a fair one. They know that the chalk marks on your wall are an accurate record of their debts. This trust is fragile. A single act of deceit, if discovered, could ruin you. The social pressure to be honest is immense, because the consequences of being branded a cheat are catastrophic. The academic world has long been fascinated by how trust and reputation functioned in pre-modern economies, without formal contracts, credit scores, or regulatory bodies like the Better Business Bureau. How did people manage transactions? The answer lies in what they call reputation mechanisms within small communities. Your alehouse is a perfect case study. You'll repeat it. Positive interactions with your customers create a feedback loop of trust. They trust you, so they give you their business. Their continued business proves you are trustworthy. Your reputation also serves as a form of social insurance. When your husband fell ill last year and couldn't work for 2 weeks, it was your steady income from the alehouse that kept your family fed. Your neighbors, confident in your ability to pay them back, were willing to extend you credit for firewood and flour. Your good name was your collateral. You look at your daughter, who is now helping you serve the customers. You realize that you are not just teaching her how to brew ale. You are teaching her how to build and maintain a reputation. You are showing her the importance of honesty, consistency, and quality. You are entrusting her not just with a recipe, but with the good name of the family. When she eventually takes over, she will inherit this reputation, a precious and invisible dowry. It will be her responsibility to uphold it, to add her own bricks to the wall. The clerk finishes his ale, pays you, and thanks you again before heading back out into the night. His words linger in your mind. Your brew is always sound. It's a simple phrase, but it is the cornerstone of your entire world. It is the reason you can survive the winter, feed your family, and look your neighbors in the eye. It is the quiet, hard -1 prize for a life of meticulous, unending work. The years continue their slow, steady march. Your daughter is now a young woman, fully capable of managing a brew day on her own. Your hands, gnarled and stiff, are better suited for gentler tasks now, like minding your grandchildren as they play on the floor. You sit on your stool by the fire, a position you've occupied for a lifetime, and you notice the subtle but undeniable changes happening in the world outside your door. The future that the traveling merchant spoke of all those years ago is no longer a distant whisper. It is arriving. The biggest change is the sound and smell of the word beer. It's everywhere now. The large brewhouse on the edge of town, the one started by the merchant Walter, has expanded. He now has 2, and they produce vast quantities of the bitter, hoppy beverage. The new taverns that have opened in town don't serve traditional ale at all. They only sell beer, served from large, standardized barrels. The sharp, pungent aroma of hops now frequently drifts through the town, mingling with and sometimes overpowering the familiar smells of wood smoke and livestock. This shift from unwritten ale to hopped beer is one of the most significant transformations in the history of food and drink, and you are witnessing its final stages. It's a change driven by economics, technology, and shifting tastes. Hops, with their superior preservative qualities, made brewing a more stable, predictable, and scalable enterprise. It allowed for the creation of a product that could be stored for long periods and transported over great distances without spoiling. Beer became a commodity, while your unwritten ale remained a local craft. You see the change in your own clientele. The younger generation, including some of your old regular sons, have developed a taste for the bitter beer. They see it as modern, sophisticated. They sometimes jokingly refer to your unwritten ale as old wives' drink, a phrase that stings with a truth you can't deny. Your customers are now mostly older men, those who grew up with the taste of your ale and remain loyal out of nostalgia and habit. Your alehouse has become a small island of tradition in a rising sea of change. The very language is changing. People are beginning to use the word ale to refer to any malt beverage, whether it's made with unwritten or hops. The distinction that was once so clear: ale was with unwritten, beer was with hops, is blurring. Historians still puzzle over the precise evolution of these terms, but you are living it. Your craft is being linguistically erased. You and your daughter have had long, quiet conversations about it. She, being younger and more practical, has suggested trying to brew with hops. Just a small batch, Shed said, to see if we can capture some of the younger drinkers. You haven't forbidden it, but you have resisted. It feels like a surrender, an admission that your entire life's work, the knowledge passed down from your mother, is obsolete. One day, your daughter comes home from the market with a small bag. It contains hops. She doesn't ask for your permission. She simply tells you, gently but firmly, "Mother, we must try. The world is not as it was." You watch as she brews with them. The process is mostly the same, but the moment she adds the hops to the boiling wort, the smell that fills the house is alien to you. It's not the familiar, complex, herbal perfume of your gruit. It's a sharp, aggressive bitterness. It smells like someone else's brewery. When the beer is ready, she offers you the first taste. You take a sip. It's clean, it's bitter, and it is undeniably well made. Your daughter has learned her craft well, but it is not your ale. It has no euro, no bog myrtle, no soul as you understand it. It is the taste of the future, a future that has finally breached the walls of your home. It's a future that tastes of efficiency, stability, and commerce, and it leaves a sad, bitter taste in your mouth that has nothing to do with the hops. The seasons have blurred into a long, continuous stream of memory. You spend most of your days now by the hearth, your hands busy with small, quiet tasks like shelling peas or winding yarn. Your daughter, now the true alewife of the house, manages the business with a skill that makes your heart swell with pride. The hoppy beer she brews now sells alongside your traditional gruit ale, a compromise that has kept your small business afloat. As the year draws to a close, with the days at their shortest and the nights at their longest, it is time for the final, most fundamental act of record minus keeping. Your daughter brings you a small, smooth stick of hazelwood, about the length of your forearm, and a sharp knife. This is your primary account book, your balance sheet for the entire year. It is a tally stick, a beautifully simple and effective accounting tool that has been used for centuries by everyone from kings managing the royal treasury to peasants like you tracking their meager assets. The use of tally sticks is well documented by historians, with some surviving examples now resting in museums. But for you, it is a living, breathing part of your financial life. You take the stick and the knife. Your daughter sits beside you, watching intently. This is a ritual she will one day perform herself. You begin at one end of the stick. With a steady hand, you start to carve a series of notches into the wood. Each notch represents a unit of value, but the system is more sophisticated than simple lines. A thin notch, just a scratch on the surface, might represent a penny. A deeper, wider notch in the shape of a V could be a shilling worth 12 pence. A much larger, cross-wise cut might represent a full pound 20 shillings. You are not just carving random marks. You are incising your memory of the year's business onto the wood. You carve a series of small notches for the daily income, then a larger one for the profits from the street. Giles Feast Day Ale. You add another series of cuts for the surprising success of your daughter's new beer. This is the income side. Then, you turn the stick over. On the opposite side, you begin to carve the year's expenses. A large notch for the barley you purchased throughout the year. A smaller, but still significant, set of marks for the fuel, the wooden peat that kept your fire going. A tiny, almost insignificant scratch for the costly spices you bought for the special brews. You even make a notch to represent the loss from that one-soured batch, a permanent reminder carved into your financial history. This stick is a physical ledger. It is a database you can hold in your hand, but its genius lies in what comes next. To create a receipt or a contract, the stick would be split lengthwise, down the middle, through all the notches. You would keep one half, the stock, and the other party would take the other half, the foil, because the grain of the wood and the imperfections of the split are unique. The two halves can only match each other perfectly. It is an ingenious, low-stack, and virtually tamper-proof system. The phrase our account tally comes directly from this practice of matching the two halves of the stick. While you are tracking your own business, you might also have smaller sticks tracking the debts owed to you. At the end of the year, when Thomas the Stoneman finally settles his long minus standing tab, you would take out his tally stick, match your half with his, and then, in a moment of mutual satisfaction, you would both throw the paid minus in minus full stick into the fire. For now, this stick is just for your own records. It is a summary of your year, a year of hard work, small victories, and quiet resilience. You run your thumb over the fresh notches, each one a memory of a transaction, a story of a day's labor. The wood feels solid and real in your hand. This is not an abstract string of numbers on a page. It is a tangible, tactile record of your family's survival and modest prosperity. You hand the completed stick to your daughter. She examines it, her fingers tracing the same notches you just carved. She understands what it represents. It is the story of their year, written in a language older than parchment. It is the final, quiet accounting of a medieval life. The tally stick for the year is complete, a tangible record of your family's perseverance. The last of the evening's customers has departed, their footsteps fading into the cold, silent night. Your daughter has barred the door, and a quiet peace finally settles over your small home. All that is left to do is the final, most ancient task of the day, banking the embers. You move to the hearth, the heart of your home, which now holds a low, glowing bed of coals. The roaring fire of the brew day has been allowed to die down, its work finished, but you cannot let it go out completely. To start a fire from scratch with flint and steel is a difficult, time-consuming task. Preserving this core of heat is a vital nightly ritual, a bridge of warmth from one day to the next. Your daughter watches as you perform the familiar steps. You take a long handled shovel and carefully push all the glowing embers into a tight pile in the center of the hearth. You are gathering the life of the fire, concentrating its remaining energy. Then, you cover this glowing mound with a thick, heavy blanket of ash from the edges of the fireplace. This ash acts as an insulator, starving the embers of oxygen just enough so that they don't burn out, but not so much that they are extinguished. They will smolder slowly, safely, throughout the night, a sleeping dragon awaiting its reawakening at dawn. This simple act is laden with symbolism. You are putting the day to bed. You are closing down the workshop, banking the engine of your craft. The house grows darker as the embers are covered, the dancing shadows on the walls replaced by a deep, steady gloom, broken only by the dim light of a single rushlight. The sounds of the house change, too. The crackle and pop of the fire gives way to a profound silence. Now you can hear the faint, rhythmic hiss of the newest batch of ale fermenting in its barrel in the corner. It's a sound of quiet, invisible work, of life continuing even in the dark. It is the sound of potential, the promise of income and sustenance for the days to come. It's a comforting sound, the lullaby of your trade. You look around the room, your world contained within these four walls. You see your grandchildren asleep on their small mattress, their faces peaceful in the dim light. You see your daughter, her face weary but content, her mind already on the tasks of tomorrow. You see the tools of your trade, the mash, rake leaning against the wall, the copper cauldron gleaming dully, the chalk marks on the wall telling their silent stories of credit and trust. This room has been the stage for your entire life. It has been a brewery, a market, a laboratory, a pharmacy, and a home. It has seen births and mourned deaths. It has weathered the slow, inexorable shift from ale to beer, from GRUet to hops, from one generation to the next. It is a testament to resilience, to the quiet, unrecorded history of a woman's labor. Your personal record minus keeping, from the chalk on the wall to the notches on the stick, was not for posterity or for kings. It was for survival. It was a tool to manage a precarious existence, to ensure there was always enough, and to build a small, modest legacy to pass on. As you finally lie down on your own mattress, pulling the scratchy wool blanket up to your chin, the cold of the floor seems less important than the deep, satisfying weariness in your bones. It is the weariness of a day, in the life of meaningful work. The banked fire holds the promise of tomorrow's worth, and the fermenting ale holds the promise of tomorrow's bread. All is well. All is quiet. The sounds of the alehouse have faded now, replaced by the soft, rhythmic breathing of your sleeping family. The only sound is the gentle whisper of the wind outside and the slow, patient work of the yeast in the barrel, a sound so faint it might just be part of a dream. You feel yourself drifting, a slow, easy descent into the deep, quiet darkness of sleep. The worries of the day, the price of barley, the competition down the street, the ever-present threat of a soured batch all dissolve and lose their sharp edges, becoming hazy, distant thoughts. You are floating in a warm, dark space, the sweet, malty scent of the mash surrounding you like a comforting blanket. The aches in your back and hands have vanished, replaced by a feeling of weightless peace. The endless cycle of hauling, stirring, and waiting has come to a stop. Here, in this space between waking and dreaming, there is only rest. The fire is safely banked, its warmth a deep, steady pulse at the heart of your home. The accounts are tallied, the day's work recorded and complete. There is nothing left to do but to let go. Your thoughts drift back over the years, not as a series of struggles, but as a long, flowing river. You see your mother's hands guiding yours. Feel the rough texture of the barley. Smell the complex perfume of 1,000 batches of GRUit. These memories are no longer tasks to be performed, but gentle, hazy images in a dreamscape. Your daughter's face appears, confident and capable, and you feel a profound sense of peace, of a legacy safely passed. The future is in her hands now. Your work is done. You can rest. Let the quiet darkness envelop you completely, and drift off into a deep and well-minded sleep. The end of the article. Good night.